gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and welcome to Monday. It was an exciting weekend for me. A lot of stuff going. I'll tell you about it here in just a minute. But we got a good show lined up for you here today in the old radio broadcast. A little rainy, little cool. Current temperature is let me see, is 40. I mean, I want to be accurate here. 46 degrees here in on top of the world in Homer, Alaska. A little bit of rain, a little cooler. But overall, what a great weekend. Friday and Saturday, just absolutely gorgeous scorchers. Yesterday, still warm, a little bit cloudy and a little rainy today. We needed it, though. Don't want it to get too hot for too long. No, don't want the summer of fires to be part of our mantra this year. Anyway, and we are ready to we're ready to crack into it. In hour one today, we've got a bunch of headlines to go over, including some interesting insight from the legislature. A couple of the legislators out there basically are saying the quiet part out loud. If you don't have to necessarily even really read between the lines that hard. You just have to listen to what they're saying, and you can basically see that that they are literally attempting to hold the gas line hostage over other policies. I mean, they're literally saying it. I mean, we're going to get into this ADN article here in just a few minutes from Alex DeMarban and Ira Samuels that goes into this, and the things that they're saying in this article. It's made it pretty clear that there are members of the legislature who are more interested in making sure that they can leverage this bill against other things. And quite honestly, again, we should make it clear that I don't think that some of these legislators want to or are interested in a gas line. I think that they are probably more interested in killing petroleum and oil and gas development. And they would want to rely more on renewables, and they want to rely on the permanent fund to, and again, this is I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is part of that process. Remember when we were talking about how there was this huge push in the legislature to get the permanent fund itself over $100 billion? And that is in part due to the fact that these legislators don't want to have to rely on petroleum and gas. They're in their worldview, we shouldn't be drilling for oil. We shouldn't be exploring. And if they can get the permanent fund to $100 million, then we don't have to rely on it, supposedly. Now, we all know what would really happen. We all know that if they got their hands, if the permanent fund got up to be over $100 billion and they could draw $5 billion a year from it, yet they were still getting $2 billion a year from oil and gas development, we know that they just spend that anyway, because that's Parkinson's principle, right? I mean, it just expands it just fills right up. But we're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk a little bit more about the whole Decoy Dan thing, and what's going on there. This has happened before, not in the state of Alaska, but in the state of Washington. Suzanne Downing's got an interesting piece on that as well. Hillcorp has been greenlit for more North Cook Inlet gas development. And there are people who are hoping that that development and that will lead to more gas and potentially help slow down the gas crisis in the Cook Inlet. I mean, fingers crossed. That's what's going on as well. Seth Church has got a piece as well in Must Read talking about the gas pipeline and the effects of stuff that's going on in Fairbanks. And what else was? There's that big earthquake in the Philippines as well. And we'll see what happens. It was first reported. I was talking to somebody who was I was online with a friend, a group of friends yesterday, and one of them is in Thailand, and he got the notice right after it happened. It was reported in Thailand that it was an 8.3 magnitude earthquake, but now it looks like it's been downgraded to a 7.8. But that luckily no tsunami warnings for across the Pacific for us. We should be good to go on that. And I think that's it. It's kind of a slow news week. Oh, we didn't get and the rural health fund. That was the other thing. The rural health fund, the Rural Health Transformation Fund is the official title of it. But boy, you could see the people clamoring for this money. Oh, they are clamoring for this money in a big way. We'll see what we'll see what happens here as we go through and talk about this. But that's what's lining up here for everything around us. I did have to laugh because there is a weather advisory, and it is a winter weather advisory it's June for the North Slope. Snow accumulation of 4 to 8 inches, winds gusting as high as 30 miles per hour in Attican Pass until 10 p.m. tonight. So, man, I am so glad. I am so glad that we don't have that. We'll see. They're saying that the weather, by the way, that the temperatures are going to be cool today and probably tomorrow, and then we'll on Wednesday we should see the heat come back. So that should be a good attempt right there. All right. So where do we get started this morning? I think we will start with the let's get started with this rural health stuff. Ira Samuels over at the ADN's got a story where they are talking about it. Now, for those of you who don't know what this is about the Rural Health Transformation Program. This is that $1.2 billion payment out of the One Big Beautiful Bill that is coming to Alaska over 5 years. And so it ends up being about $272 million that the state is going to receive for the next 4 or 5 years. And the part of the contingency on that was that the state had to come up with ways to spend the money. Surprise, surprise. And so they received a bunch of proposals. Now, we always hear about how in Alaska, one of our biggest challenges in Alaska is healthcare, which I understand there are some challenges and problems for sure. But also, I have come to understand that one of the biggest, I don't want to use the word leech, but one of the biggest dependency groups out there is the medical groups. They are and have been receiving large amounts of money from the state and the federal government for years. Brad Keithley has talked about this, how there are many, many folks out there who are in business, and essentially that's been one of the reasons why anytime there was a talk about cutting back on certain state funding, there were whole groups of hospitals and doctors that were against it because they're built their livelihood around a lot of this government largesse. Well, this is no different. $272 million a year for the next 4 or 5 years. That's a lot of money. They received 1,800 funding proposals. The letters of interest summary says that there are 1,800 funding proposals. They've now narrowed that down to a potential projects list of just over 400 that are going to go over consideration for this month before the final decision is going to be made. And it's the Alaska's receiving the second largest sum in the nation after one allocated to Texas, and by far ours is still the largest sum per capita. And this spurred a mad dash by Alaska healthcare providers to come up with creative ways to spend it. I mean, it really is supposed to be transforming healthcare, right? And so now they're taking a look at it, and they're going through all the different ones. They list several of the projects here that are available for this rural healthcare money. Among the projects that advanced for further consideration are one from the Tanana Chiefs Conference to deliver vaccines and pharmaceuticals to interior villages using drones. There's several proposals to disseminate wearable health monitoring devices to rural residents to track their blood pressure and other biometric data, and a plan from the Wrangell Public School District to purchase virtual reality headsets as part of a new healthcare professional career track. I mean, it sounds about as crazy as you'd expect when they have $272 million to be able to do it. That it sounds about as crazy as you would expect to be. And that's every year. So, I mean, I know we've got to advance. We've got to do some of these things. But, all I can think of every time I look at that is that $272 million and realize that 25% of that every year is borrowed money that we're increasing the debt with. And I just kind of, just kind of shake my head. More than 300 of the proposals were submitted by companies headquartered outside the state, including big tech giants like Microsoft. The state advanced just 19 of those proposals submitted by outside companies, including 8 from Providence, which is based in Washington, D.C. Washington State, not Washington, D.C. And among the other advanced proposals is one from a Massachusetts-based startup looking to partner with the Anchorage School District to launch a school-based behavioral telehealth initiative for the schools. Oh, and a New York-based company has offered to launch an app providing peer mentoring for Alaska youths ages 13 to 26. So again, there's all different kinds of projects out there, and they had different thresholds. Those under 50,000, those under 250,000, those under $1 million, those under 5 million, and those over 5 million. The state advanced 28 of those 400 projects. 28 of them were requests for over $5 million. So, and one of them is from Ryanair to purchase new aircraft to deliver medical supplies to rural Alaska. Which is apparently is a VTOL aircraft that takes off like a helicopter and flies at a plane. It's a laundry list. It is literally a wish list. And I want to have great health care in the state. Don't get me wrong. But I see this, and every time I read through some discussion about this, I just kind of shake my head and think of the laundry list of things that people are going to, want to put together on this. Anyway, it's kind of spooky. It's kind of spooky. Yeah, use leech instead of bloodsuckers. I was trying to be nice about it. But again, because there are great people in the healthcare industry, but again, just like any other industry that's become dependent on government for a big portion of their livelihood and their business model, they serve their own self-interest. They're not necessarily serving the interests of the patient at that point. That's my problem. Anyway, we got to go. We're going to continue here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break here, and we're ready to go. I'm sorry if I seem distracted this morning. It's because my main broadcast computer crashed on Saturday morning. I got up early. I had an off-the-air emergency on one of the stations, and I got up and my computer wouldn't boot. And anyway, so cue a montage of the next 12 hours of me getting everything ready. And so I had this new computer. I just hadn't. Anyway, I fixed it, and I'm on a new computer, and everything is running a lot smoother, but I'm still dialing in the little tweaks as far as the levels and everything else that I need to be providing, because I'm not convinced that it is working here. Let me see here. Let me turn this up a little bit. I'm just trying to check. See, that's a little better. Okay. So, yep. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to, there we go. That's a little better. Okay. Yeah. So new fancy deal. It's all fancy, and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything works as intended. That's where it's going. Let me get caught up with you guys. I had a long weekend. I mean, I got to relax yesterday, but boy, it was a long weekend. Okay. Good morning. What's new and exciting? Hello. MD use leashes instead of bloodsuckers. Yeah, medical groups. Medical professionals. I mean, there's all kinds of companies. I mean, you could see it. They got Ryanair, an aviation company, is attempting to put a bill in there for, I mean, right? I mean, that just seems, it just seems weird. There's a bunch of stuff in there. All right. Let's see. Scrolling through. I expect ANTHC to suck much of the money and hire even more employees. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's all got to go through the same process, right? It's all going to go through the same. Everybody's out there. How about providing vitamin D for all Alaskans for 10 years? Oh, man. The bulk of this money is not going for healthcare. It's going for administration. Well, isn't that true of almost any government grant at this point? Isn't that's, Willie says this bill is a pathetic joke. You can't even get stitched up in Bethel's billion-dollar hospital. They medevac you to Anchorage for everything. Well, that's kind of crazy. McCabe has a BD thing coming up in Big Lake tomorrow, I think. I think you need to learn to use better acronyms. BD. What is he? All I could think of was BDSM. That's not right, okay? What is it, Rick? Tell me what it is. Because what I was thinking was obviously not right. Birthday, jeez. All right. It's a lot different than what, I was like, racking my brain here. You could see that I'm obviously a low-class person because that was my first thought. That was my first. I was like, BD, did you not finish that thing? What's the business development? Bird dog. I mean, I don't know. Birth and death. What are you going to do? Okay. We go over here, turn this up just a little bit. Okay. Everything's looking golden. Golden and right, just the way it should be. Okay, we're getting into it. Let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do this thing. I'm a little disappointed.
Broadcasting across the state from his own private studio with that killer 15-foot commute from the couch. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Okay. How are you? You ready to go? Let's get with the program here and get into it. Some of the other things that we want to talk about. Seth Church, who is now running in the election for the legislature, has got a piece up in the Alaska story, talking about the North Slope gas and the North Slope gas line, and it was a pretty decent article. But I think that it is, he does come to a good point, which is going to help set us up for this next discussion about the gas line. Now, we've only got 11 days before the end of the special session. It's supposed to end on the 19th of this month. So we don't have that much time left over, but there still seems to be a lot of things being done, a lot of games being played. Seth goes on to talk about a lot of this and what they're doing and the moving and the back and forth and why this is good for Alaska. And it's got a lot of good stuff in it. But he comes down and near the end of the article, he says this: skepticism cannot become paralysis. And he's talking about the two sides who are kind of tussling over what the gas line bill is going to look like. He says skepticism cannot become paralysis. There is a difference between negotiating a better deal and making a deal impossible. If the legislature loads this project with a tax structure that the industry cannot finance, then Alaska will not have, quote, stood up to Glen Farn, unquote. Alaska will have stood in its own way again. There's nothing neutral. Doing nothing, he says, is a decision. And see, I think that's where we're kind of at in this whole process, is that we are kind of at that point where doing nothing is a decision. And I think that is kind of a decision that some legislators are leaning towards, quite honestly. This article, again, over at the ADN, talks about what we're facing in the legislative special session. They talk about how Glenfarne provided an actual cost, a range of cost, $45 to $55 billion roughly. Some of the legislators, including Bert Stedman, says that it's still too low. He said, that he thinks a realistic cost is more $62 to $65 billion. And he said it's still more realistic than past estimates, which he calls was real garbage, but he's concerned. Now, here's my thing. I don't know why would that matter, because the Hill Corp president, Adam Prestige, he sat in front of the lawmakers last week and he assured them that any cost overruns the state has nothing to do with that. Prestige sought to reassure lawmakers that cost overruns would not be passed on to Alaska consumers. Under the framework currently being negotiated with NSTAR, the proposed gasportation rate would be fixed at approximately $16. Oops, sorry, I highlighted the wrong part. Basically, if the costs escalate. During the testimony before the House and Senate committees, legislators expressed concern that if only the first phase of the project is built, consumers will ultimately face high gas prices. And if the construction costs escalate, they're obviously concerned about Alaska being on the hook for more. And Prestige sought to reassure lawmakers that cost overruns would not be passed on to Alaska consumers. He said Glenfarne supports statutory language specifically prohibiting cost overruns being borne by the state of Alaska or by regulated utility customers like those from NSTAR. So they're basically saying this is all on Glenfarne or anybody else, and they're willing to. So when somebody like Bert Stedman gets up there and says, it could be more, well, I guess the danger is if it is more, Glenfarne would have to find more investment, or there's a danger that the project won't go through. But what difference does it make to you if you are, if you just write a bill that fixes the tax structure? What difference does it make if it's too high or too low? It doesn't open up the state to any different level of liability or anything else. Why the foot dragging? What's going on with that? Why are we dragging our feet on this? They say that they're doing their due diligence, right? And of course, they had to quote Wielechowski in here, who is part of the Kathy Giesel cadre of dragging this out for 36 separate meetings in the Senate Resources Committee. And they always come to him for a good quote. The ADN never fails to get a quote, it seems like, on senatorial issues from Wielechowski. He's like their go-to on this. But in talking about this, I think that they opened themselves up and have kind of let the cat out of the bag. This is where we're going to get into this. So, according to Bill Wielechowski, gaining enough support in the Senate for the bill will be difficult. He said, the people out there demanding that we just take a vote on this without doing our due diligence, that's not responsible. That's not us exercising our fiduciary obligations and responsibilities. I mean, you've done more with less. You've done worse things, right? He said, I appreciate the due diligence that the committees are doing. It's possible to get something passed, but I think the challenge is going to be getting to 11 votes in the Senate. That's where he's at. Now, keep in mind that there is a Republican majority in the Senate, even though the current majority is made up of both Democrats and Republicans. Keep in mind that overall, there is a Republican majority in the Senate. So he's going to lump and throw a bunch of Republicans under the bus on this thing as well. If, we'll see what happens there. We'll see what kind of pressure that goes on with this. So then they go on to talk about things that are going on in the House. And they got Andy Josephson, smiling face here. Oh, smiling face. And he talks about it as well. And I think this is where the rubber starts to meet the road. Ultimately, Josephson said the question lawmakers are considering comes down to, does the bill incentivize development and investment in the gas line without going too far? Okay. I mean, I could see that. You don't want to necessarily lose out on money you don't have to, but also 25% of zero is still zero, or 8% of zero is still zero, or 5% of zero, whatever it is. If we don't build it, I would be willing to undertax it now to get it going so that we could revisit it later on. But anyway, he said, we have members that want a gas line virtually at almost any cost. Yes, because they care about the private economy and what's going on out there. And they know what a boon it would be to Alaskans. I mean, Seth Church talks about it in his piece about Fairbanks, all of a sudden realizing they're getting a 61% increase in their fuel surcharge. And that's real money for people. That's a real money situation. He said, anyway, we have members that want a gas line at virtually any cost. And then we have other members that believe this is an opportunity to engage in other issues and don't view this as time to give up our free agency over these issues. We're in a special session about a gas line, about the tax structure for a gas line. We have other members that believe this is an opportunity to engage in other issues and don't view this as a time to give up our free agency over those issues. They have other things that they want to fight about. They have other things that they want, that they are willing to hold hostage. Asked if they thought about another special session would be, productive if they don't get, if the governor doesn't get what he wants. He said it's likely to not to be. No, he said no. He said, and again, this goes back to, we want to hold other issues hostage. If you're the governor and you've got 9 marbles and you veto the 9 marbles and demand 10, you're going to have a very uncooperative person on the other side of the marble trade. So again, this goes back to the bill trading that they tried to do at the end of the session for defined benefits and everything else. They're talking about it out loud and in the open. Again, we have members that believe this is an opportunity to engage in other issues. They want to leverage it. Wilikowski said, no, we're not trading bills with the governor. This project is too important and it needs to stand on its own, just like all those bills should stand on their own. Right, Bill, right. We know you've never leveraged anything. We know you've never leveraged any of that. I think, you're finally seeing it. You're finally seeing it out loud. They're talking, this and not really hiding behind it. We've got members that believe this is an opportunity to engage in other issues. You can't, again, you're going to be remembered as the legislature that either passes on one of the greatest opportunities that the state's had since the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, or the guys that killed it. That's what's going on here. This is, yeah. All right. The horse trading is the problem, says Joshua. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. We're going to try and hold one thing hostage for another. Well, good luck with that, my friends. Good luck with that. All right, we're going to continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We got more coming up. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We've got Adam Crum coming at the top of the hour. Don't forget about that. We'll return right after this.
listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. All right. I'm going backwards here. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. There won't be any gas line. The Herald has been all about the gas line. Now there not going to be a gas line. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know. Kevin McCabe, June 10th, at Floaters at Big Lake. June 10th is what, Wednesday? I will provide birthday cake and appetizers. Peel free local businesses by purchasing from the menu. Donations will go to help with Kevin's re-election campaign. So it's a birthday party and an elections gig at the same time. Awesome. A floating LNG plant, Samsung Heavy, floating LNG deal in what? In Africa. That's crazy. All right. Are we still talking about cost overruns? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We're still talking about cost overruns, and they said very specifically, we are okay if you want to write statutory language that prohibits the state from paying any cost overruns. We're okay with that. We understand. You're not responsible. We're saying it out loud now. And they keep going on and on and on. Randy, haven't seen Randy in a hot minute. Hey, Randy. Michael is right. We don't have to know exactly how much the Gasline project is going to cost. Just like I don't have to know how much it's going to cost Michael to build his radio studio, even though I directly benefit from listening to the show. Oh, that was nice. Good morning, Cindy. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Special session is a one-issue session. Get her done. That's the thing. They're trying to turn it into a trade-orama. That's what they want to do. Let's see. You're in a special session for the gas line, says Judith. Nothing else. Exactly. Jamie Allard apparently posted it may go to the floor for a vote tomorrow. Yeah, they said in the article that they were expecting it to be by midweek. So maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll see. What election stuff? People don't listen, said Rick. Well, that's pretty clear. That's pretty clear that people don't listen. I'm sorry. I'm reading Joshua's comment here. Those are legal proceedings that could have had relief, but they decided to do it. Regardless of the type of policy, this creates regulatory lag that affects actual people's lives. Same with a gas line if it doesn't get built. Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the problem. I'm becoming more convinced that they're not interested. Some of them, again, are not interested in actually, having it work. They're not interested in getting the gas line. And so whatever they can do to either horse trade for it, or if it goes down in flames, they're okay with it. That's kind of the impression that I'm getting from a lot of these people. I mean, Andy Josephson certainly doesn't care because he's retiring, right? He can now vote with his philosophy. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Friday is the scheduled for session on the House side. Yeah. You don't think it'll come up before that, Jeremy? You don't think it'll be done before then? I had heard midweek, and then the article in the ADN said midweek. But I mean, I guess take your time with it. We got 10 days. We got 10 days till the very end. So we'll see. I know I will be recording all the names of everybody and I'm going to do my best to lay it at their feet if they vote it down, because that's what Alaskans need to know. They need to know where this is, they need to know who's in favor of getting the gas line here or not. And yes, I would say almost regardless of what the state take is, one way or the other. I'm 100% behind that. Okay, let's get to it. We're about to jump back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Well, we're 5 seconds out. I was a little early. I know, just a little early. Here we go.
Alaskan Talk Radio with a host who actually lives in Alaska. I know! Weird, right? This is The Michael Dukes Show. Starring Michael Dukes.
Okay. We are all ready to go here. Let's get this thing going on. So we were just talking in the break here about this problem with legislators and this horse trading that's trying to happen here. And look, this has been a problem since the very beginning. It's almost like we have the perfect storm of events here, right? You've got a bunch of legislators that don't like Mike Dunleavy, including Kathy Giesel, Bill Wielechowski, and several others. And they don't want him to have a win. That's one thing. I mean, that's not everything. But I'm just saying, if you're doing a pros and cons kind of list here, that's all on one list, right? Then you've got legislators who have a philosophical belief that oil is bad. And they, like their party, have come to the conclusion that we need to stop oil production in the state of Alaska. Now, the problem is that we garner between a quarter and a third of all of our revenues from oil production. And so that's a challenge. So how do we, let's again, we'll wrap all this thing up into one big, beautiful bow. How do we do that? Well, we take all of the permanent fund dividend away from the people. We use all that money ourselves, and then we grow the permanent fund, which again, what did they just do in this last thing? They transferred another $1.7 billion into the corpus of the fund from the earnings reserve. That was a big chunk of that money, was a transfer. That's why they went from $6 billion the year before to $8 billion this last year, because they went up $500 million in spending, and then they put $1.5 billion, $1.6 billion into the corpus of the fund. So they want to grow the corpus of the fund. They're looking for that $100 million sweet spot where they can continually draw $5 billion out of the fund every year. And that way, one, they don't have to be beholden to the people for the, for revenue. They've got their own private supply. I've got my own private stash. I don't have to depend on anybody. I'm getting high on my own supply. They've got their own private stash. They don't have to worry about what's going on in the economy because they're not getting anything out of the economy. And so it's kind of this perfect storm. Now, they are antithetical for whatever reason, be it that they don't like the governor or that they want to see oil crash and burn or that they believe that the maximum benefit for state resources mentioned in the Constitution, they believe that that means maximum dollars to the state of Alaska. I mean, you will be reminded that it was was it Andy Joseph? No, it was it was Matt Clayman who said that it was the $1 billion that was the problem, right? The $1 billion was the problem. That, oh man, we really needed that. That $1 billion was just not enough. We needed that $1 billion, and it's just not enough. And we need to, we need to look at it. Here it is. It's Matt Clayman. Sorry, I was looking for the cut. This is it.
Under this proposal, we often talk about how the gas line is going to bring enormous revenue to the state. And particularly, I think, at least when we sit in the legislature, we think, is this going to be a big increase in revenue to state government? And I'm looking at slide 32. Never in a single year do the revenues to the state exceed $1 billion. And I'm not minimizing that $1 billion is no small amount of money to the state, but I think about how much we're drawing annually on the POMV draw from the earnings reserve to fund state government, which is over $3 billion and has been for the last few years. And so I look at this, which shows less than $1 billion coming to the state in the best years. If this project has potential revenue to the state, is there some other means the state can achieve great revenue from this particular project? Because it doesn't look like it's coming from royalties and production taxes. I mean, and again, not to understate that we don't need the revenue, but this doesn't look like a game changer. And so where's the big revenue to the state in the project?
So we draw $1 billion, but it's not enough. I mean, we take $3 billion from the draw of the earnings reserve from the permanent fund itself and everything else. But I mean, $1 billion is just not enough. So again, you've got this cadre of folks out there, those that believe that oil and gas development should stop, those that don't like Governor Dunleavy, those that want to maximize the revenue to the state, because for them, that's what it's all about. It's all about power, right? It's all about the power of how can we get more money and how can we spend more money. That at part is also at the root of why they've gotten to taking your PFD every year, because they know better than you how to spend it, right? They know better than you how to spend it. That's important to them. And so here we sit, that's a huge thing. Oh, and Ben Carpenter throws another twist in on it. He says they don't want Republicans to have a huge win that helps conservatives voters turnout. They see the left in charge of both houses and the mansion next year. That's what they want. Well, I mean, you would think if that's what they wanted, that they'd get this done, because if there is any kind of backlash because they stood in the way of getting the gas line put together, I mean, that could hurt them. That could hurt them on the, in the end. So I don't know. I just don't know where this goes. But I find it super interesting that they are now saying literally the quiet part out loud. And I will just reiterate what I said earlier when Andy Josephson said, we have members that believe that this is an opportunity to engage in other issues. Well, he starts off by saying, we have members that want a gas line virtually at almost any cost. And we have other members that believe this is an opportunity to engage in other business and don't view this as a time to give up our free agency over these issues. Well, I hate to tell you this, Jack, but by the law, according to the state law, unless you guys vote to change the special session agenda, there is only one thing on the call, and that is the gas line. But see, this is what he's talking about. They're talking about the horse trading in the background. They're engaging in these other issues. And here's the thing, they're going to engage in these other issues. They're going to engage us right out the end of the door until there is no gas line. and the opportunity for the gas line passes us by. I mean, we got to remember Kitimat is already running right now. Kitimat is they're going, and they're looking to expand, and they're out there signing contracts for even more. Once those contracts are bought up and signed up, those are 20 and 30-year contracts. I mean, we'll be out of the game for, however long it takes, unless there's another war, I guess. But this is where we're at. It's astonishing to watch. It really is astonishing to watch. But this is the legislature that we have. And you'd think it would get better, but I've kind of come to the conclusion that en masse people suck. It's just kind of how they are. They're not paying attention. And it's it's a crazy thing. Rob says that he's not talking about other issues. The issues that he's talking about is go wind and solar. Now I'm going to read that again. I still don't see that. I see that maybe I'm reading it as a double entendre, Rob. He said, Rob says he's saying that certain people would rather ditch the line and go with wind and solar instead. And I can say, okay, yeah, I can see that maybe as part of it. But I also see it because later on they start talking about how the governor has vetoed. And if he vetoes all these things, so again, that goes to some of the other issues that they want to deal with. School funding, defined benefits, all these other things. The governor's got a bunch of bills on his desk right now, and the bills either have to be vetoed or they go into law automatically the day before the session ends. So maybe we're just playing a waiting game. Maybe we're just playing a waiting game right now. I don't know. I don't think it just has to do with oil and gas. I don't think it just with wind and solar. That may be part of it, but I think it has to do with a lot of other things as well. All right. We got to go. We're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will return with more. Adam Crum, candidate for governor, is up next right here. That's bugging me. I can hear a crackling, and it's bugging the hell out of me. I don't know what's going on. This whole new system here. It's okay. All right. Well, that's kind of weird. I don't know what's going on with that, but it shouldn't be doing that. Let me I'm sorry. You guys are my guinea pigs today here as I do this and do that. How about that? Let me try this. See if it's still crackly. Okay. It's not crackly there. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll figure it out here in a little bit. Okay. I see that Adam Crum is in the chat room here. Something else I thought I had fixed, but okay, stop that. Something else I thought I had fixed was that, and it didn't work all of a sudden. It worked and then it didn't work. So we'll get to all that here in just a minute. Let me excuse me while I close all this down. Woof. There we go. All right. You missed the first hour. Well, you know what? That's easy. All you got to do is go watch it on the replay, or you can listen to it on the podcast. So it's good stuff. Adam is, again, I could see him in the green room here. Let me get caught up on the comments real quick to see if there's anything else. People, they ruin everything. People They ruin everything. Every legislature, everything the legislature touches turned to crap. I mean, not everything, but a good bunch of it, a good bunch of it. Ryan says maybe we could build a pipeline that has solar panels and windmills attached and the lines carry the transmission. Yeah, we'll see. Solar power in Fairbanks in the winter will generate a lot of power for the people is what they're thinking. Yeah. I mean, have any of these people actually even been to Fairbanks? I mean, I'm just wondering, asking for a friend. Hearing aids? No, I don't have hearing aids. It's not me. Anyway. Gas line provides power as long as gas is flowing, and it will once it's built. Solar only efficiently works 30% of the year. And of course, you need to have wind. It's the difference between dispatchable power, renewables, and dispatchable power. Dispatchable power is the problem. Gas provides that dispatchable power. So there you go. All right, I'm all caught up on the comments. Thank you guys for commenting, and don't forget to. There's 58 of you or something in here. There's only 20 likes. Why are you not liking and sharing? I want to know. I'm going to hold you personally responsible for not liking and sharing. Just want to let you know that. All right, let's test this thing out here. Make sure. Hey, look, it worked. It worked right. Okay, that's it right there. That's it right there. Let's go over here to our guest, Adam Crum. We'll bring him up on the program to see what he has to say. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
Well, I see your audio. Your audio is fine from your end, but something is wrong from my end, and this is what happens when I have my computer crash. So let me go back over here, and let's see. How about this one? All right, let's try that again.
Check 1, 2. I can hear you.
Look at that. That's what it all happens. All right. Sorry, Adam. I had my computer burned up on the weekend and I had to rebuild and do a whole new one. So we're still working out the kinks on the new system here. But yeah, I mean, I got 12 years out of that computer. I think I got a solid investment out of it. All right. So you're all ready to go this morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good enough. Let me get some stuff set up here, and we will be good to go. Adam Crum going to be joining us for the next hour. We're going to go over his candidacy, why he decided to run, his plans, and his platform planks and everything else. And so we look forward to that here in just a second. I'm going to put him back in the green room, and then we're going to get things ready for. We're going to get ready to continue here in just a moment. It's all good. Yeah, it was, my computer was acting funny on Friday. And so Friday night, I was like, you know what? It's been a while. I'm going to give this thing a rest. I'm going to shut it down and I'll do some maintenance on it in the morning. And then the silence alarm went off on one of the stations at like 4:45 Saturday morning. And I got up to see what the problem was, and my computer wouldn't boot. Like nothing, like you push the button and nothing happens. And so an hour and a half later, I finally got it to boot after a million different things. And that's when I decided, you know what? I built this brand new computer that's been sitting here. I just never configured it because it takes a long time to do that. And I'm a busy guy. And so I spent 12 hours of my Saturday transferring, filing, connecting, configuring, a whole thing. And so that's why we're still having some challenges this morning with this, is some of these things are clicking through. So just wanted to let you know that's what's going on here. I'm going to drop that level down right there. So if you see me acting distracted, it's not because I don't like you. It's because I got stuff going on here. Okay. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Well, hi there, ho there, hey there. Welcome to Monday. It is the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and/or FM translator, and live around the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find the audio-only podcast and the live stream and so much more. Except for I forgot to, and all my foibles this morning, I forgot to start the podcast recording, so I'm going to have to go back and record it off the, oh man, you know, it is what it is. Good morning, and hi, how are you? Welcome to it. It's Monday, man. It's Monday. We just finished up talking about all the stuff that went over the weekend with a special session and the legislature, and are they going to give us a gas line or aren't they going to give us a gas line? It's a conundrum for sure. But we're going to put all that aside because in hour two, we're being joined for the very first time by gubernatorial candidate Adam Crum, originally from Homer, former Department of Revenue Commissioner, Department of Health Commissioner as well, and now candidate on the Republican ticket for governor. And he joins us this morning. So we're going to dive right into it here and get things ready to rock and roll and bring him on the show. We'll say it right now. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
You know, can't complain. I mean, I'm here. That's the good part. I'm here. We made it. Everything's good. So Adam, again, this is your first time being on the program. And so we welcome you for that. But we also want to get some backstory here. So let's talk a little bit about Adam Crum for folks who maybe don't know, who you are, where you came from. Go ahead and give me your Marvel history origin story kind of thing here. Tell me what's going on here.
Well, I'm just an Alaska kid. I was born in Homer. I grew up in Acre Point, graduated from Homer High School. It's one of those jobs. It was playing sports a lot, but had a whole fish on the docks and had the opportunity to go play football out of state. So I went down to Northwestern in the Big Ten, had a chance to play football there against the big boys. And then as soon as I was done, I couldn't wait to come back to Alaska. Back then, mid-2000s, Alaska was just on the way up. It was population was booming. It was an opportunity set for everyone. And it was an exciting prospect. So I came back and I worked at my family company and helped grow that and then bought into it and became a co-owner of Northern Industrial Training. It's the largest post-secondary training school in the state, training folks, truck driving, welding, mechanics. And I ran the corporate services side. So I had contracts with oil and gas companies for training and project development and planning. And we worked our way up. And as we went through that, Governor Dunleavy asked me to run the Department of Health and Social Services in 2018. So I jumped into that, and that was just a beast, 3,500 employees and $3.5 billion budget. And then we moved forward and did that for 4 years. And then he asked me if I'd step over and run revenue. And you're just a professional board member sitting in all the investment boards for the state of Alaska. And stepped into that for 3 years and want to use my kind of background as being a private sector guy, owning NIT as well as a commercial construction company and commercial properties, understanding the importance of that with my knowledge and background of how government works from the inside and the tweaks that can be done to actually improve lives for Alaskans. There's things that have been ignored over time that would make life better for Alaskans and for private sector businesses.
So what was your final decision? I mean, because again, you've been involved in government for, 6, 7 years now, 8 years. You have all these private sector businesses and you got things going. You're obviously a busy guy, got a lot of irons in the fire. So what exactly did you lose your mind? What exactly made you say, I think what I really need to do, because I got so much free time here, is I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for governor? Was there one thing? Was it a accumulation of things? Was there an aha moment? Walk me through the thought process here of deciding that now is the time to run for governor.
Yeah, my wife Colleen likes to joke that she was with me, going through COVID and a lot of the stuff, and she just made the comment like being a governor seems like the worst job in the world. And as we kind of continued and progressed, and we see steps in Alaska and where it's at, what really kind of hammered it home was an accumulation of stuff. I've got two little girls, and it finally came back to about like how we're going about our business in Alaska is we are failing our kids. We're not giving them any chance for hope or opportunity of staying in Alaska in the future. Like, why would they want to stay here? We have an opportunity of this massive project that's got federal support, and we are doing everything possible to kill it because we're nitpicking. And how do we actually move this ahead? And it's using that background as a private sector guy is, I always say that Michael Jordan said, "Why don't you get involved in politics?" And he said, "Well, Republicans buy shoes too." Meaning, if you're in business, you don't automatically start your day off saying, "I'm going to alienate 50% of my possible customer base." And so you have to understand that it's all about relationships and how you can move things forward. You can hold to your principles, but you can also make sure that you're bringing people ahead. You're bringing people along with you, and you're finding wins as a state, because we're here in this job to serve the people of Alaska, not ourselves. And that was one of those things we have to do something better and different with a new energy going forward, because what's been going on is not working for Alaska because we haven't done a thing in a very long time.
What's government's role? I mean, you've sparked a couple questions here outside of my normal kind of cadre of questions for new candidates, but what's government's role? You're talking about your children and creating a future for the children, for giving them a reason to stay in the state.
Yeah.
What is government's role in that, in your mind? I mean, from a 10,000-foot view, Adam Crum's view on what is government's role in doing that for a state, keeping people here, giving them opportunity. What is the role?
So I always say my pitch when I'm meeting with groups is there's two main functions of government as I see it. And that one is to protect property rights. And the second is to actually invest and build an infrastructure that the private sector can't. And that's where the government can come from. We haven't done anything from a public financing standpoint in a very long time. Like the last GEO bond was 2012. We have the ability to actually put together projects and build things to show people that Alaska is ready to take the next step to move forward. For about $1 billion, for $1 billion in projects, it's about 80 million annual debt service from a conservative standpoint. And that can actually get a lot of different things going off the ground. One of the first things I would launch would actually be a transmission line from Beluga to Healy, because our grid is just so old and antiquated. It runs from Bradley Lake north to Fairbanks, and it's a single line, single point of failure. And it doesn't even have capacity for any new power projects to come online. We need to actually make sure that we are opening up the transmission system and the grid. So things like Terra Energy, the coal project in West Sioux, has place to actually inject power into the grid.
I mean, that's a great thing. I guess my question is, and in my question of how do we pay for it, you're saying GEO bonds. So borrow the money and debt service it for the next 20 years or whatever to get that transmission lines and other things put together. You're saying cheap energy is obviously one of the key cornerstones of a better economy.
Yeah. Cheap energy is how we unlock it. GEO bonds can help us build things like capital projects. This would be roads, other specific buildings or infrastructure necessary to keep the state going. It's actually a rate reduction bond, or securitization is the tool to be used for the transmission lines. 33 states have implemented this. This is how Texas actually bounced back from the 2019 ice storms that knocked out ERCOT. There's a lot of states that have implemented these tools, and it's off-book financing, AAA rated debt, which is a tool that we can actually use to really move Alaska forward.
Let's talk overall about a fiscal plan, because I think that's where I've been starting with almost all candidates. I mean, I sidebarred there for a second, but here's where we are. What is your fiscal plan? Do you have a fiscal plan for the state? Because here's the thing. We're broke, right? I mean, the Iranian thing has kind of artificially pumped us up for a little bit. We've got some extra money, but the governor's 10-year forecast for the last 5 years has shown, billion-dollar deficits moving forward every year. I mean, we're seeing an automatic increase in escalation of $200 million plus every year, just based on, employee contracts and other escalators. So what is Adam Crum's fiscal plan for the state of Alaska? How do we how do we survive in the long term, and then how do we get to there in the short term in the meanwhile?
I think for the fiscal plan, we have to have an honest conversation with people in municipalities. We've had these fiscal plan working groups, but nothing has ever been shopped around. We've never actually had this ability to talk to the public about what it means. When I was a health commissioner in the last year, we actually were able to split the department in half, and it took a full year, one full year of public meetings, actually getting them to understand that this wasn't going to affect them in a negative way. This was actually about insight and using sunlight as the greatest disinfectant to see and peer deep into the department about how we can run better, gain efficiencies, and serve Alaskans. And when I look at it from a fiscal plan standpoint, I hate the idea of an income tax on Alaskans because we have a very relatively low labor participation. That we don't have a lot of people in Alaska that actually are producers in contributing. And so if we get to the point of like we absolutely have to implement a Bradman tax, would lean towards a sales tax because I see it as a user fee, as conservative. This is not something to say we have to have right now. I think where we're at from a stable standpoint is we're going to see cash flow positive from Pika in a year or two. We're going to actually have quite a bit more kind of capacity coming as we see more development. And I think AI data centers is actually our ability to gain revenue for the state, because it's always been anecdotal, but we finally, under SpaceX, they filed an IPO. So they had to do their financial disclosures with the SEC. Their XAI site in Memphis, they leased that out, all that computing power, and they actually get $1.25 billion a month in revenue for that site. And I use that as an example because that's 15 billion annual. Stack Energy is a group that's wanting to build power generation and AI sites in Prudhoe. They're working with DNR. They have intentionally filed as a corporate, as a C corp, right? So they can pay that 9.4%. So that's about $1.4 billion that we can get actually off of the revenue from a single large AI data center site. We got last fiscal year 1.8 billion in oil and gas production taxes. That's one of those things that we can lean towards. And
Right.
I think that we need to push the AI data centers because we can make Alaska the Silicon Tundra. We have the cold and we have access to the water.
Well, and that's part of it. You mentioned the fiscal policy working group, and they came out with their plan was a multi-part plan, and they stressed, even though it was a bipartisan group, diverse people, they came forward with a plan that had a bunch of points in it, and they stressed that it had to be done holistically. It couldn't be done one at a time. Have you looked at that? Because it went through, just to highlight it, it went through creating a constitutional spending cap, protecting the PFD in the Constitution, making some cuts, some increased oil taxes, and then a small statewide sales tax would bring us all in together, and again pull all those things together. What is your thought on that? Is that plan a workable plan? Would you use that as part of a framework, or would we be reinventing the wheel here?
It's not reinventing the wheel. I think that's got to be a part of it. Even with Dunleavy, what he tried to do this last year was he tried to do like a pound of flesh from everyone, because far too often we go back to the same well over and over for revenues, and that is oil and gas. The entire point of SB 21 was to provide stability to the system that protected Alaska on the low side, and it meant we had a shared benefit between the oil and the state on the upside at high oil prices. And so this is actually proven out. This is the longest, most stable we've had our oil and gas taxes, and we're seeing that to where we're going to go from 450,000 barrels a day in the pipeline to 600,000 in about 2 years. And it's crazy that we've actually going to fill this back up. So we're seeing the benefit of that. So we can't keep going to that group over and over saying, you guys got to rechange. But if it was a plan across, multiple groups, multiple ideas on how we're going to give this, I think then there's a conversation about maybe a modest change, something about the oil, the credits from 8 to 5, things like that on the oil side that they would be amenable to, and we would continue their level of investment if we could look at this.
It's I don't know if you've seen Brad Keithley's analysis. All the new production from Pika is great, but when you graph it out under SB 21, we have an increased amount of production, which is fantastic, but we see a decreasing amount of revenue because of the tax credits and some of the other things. Would you be willing to readdress some of those issues and look at that to where, because what we're doing is we're offsetting it. We won't start to see actual revenue come out of PICA, real revenue, until 2031. And by then they will have reached a peak and they will be on their long, that'll be on the long slope decline over the years. So, I mean, would you be interested in looking at least at that component of SB 21 or some of these new things? Because we're getting more production, but less revenue in the long run. That's a problem.
It's that's the, with Conoco being a legacy player on the slope, they get to do some carry forward costs from Capark. So it can be a part of the conversation, but it can't be the only solution, the only well that we go to, because there's going to be further expansion. There's further phases. And our tax system is set up that actually they allow them to recover investment up front, but it creates a longer tail. So the state gets a benefit longer over time. So that's the kind of stuff that I think it's worthwhile to have that intellectual discussion to actually talk about that. But I don't want to go out the gate saying we're going to tackle this right away and make sure that we go for, because I think that's going to drive down and bury. I mean, our GDP has gone up for a couple of years, and it's because of PICA and Willow and the investment that has occurred.
Well, and that's why I think the Fiscal Policy Working Group said you cannot just do one of these things. It has to be holistic. You can't just lay the burden on the taxpayer or the oil companies or that's why there has to be cuts, because the government can't be held harmless from these kind of things. It has to be an overarching plan. Do you have a plan written down on your website, like a fiscal plan or a layout of what your plan is for that?
No, we've got our normal platform stuff on the website, and we keep it pretty sparse because I want to drive people to the social media page. The goal is on the website is people look at this, sign up, volunteer, and donate.
Yeah, there you go.
You limit the where the eyeballs can go on that.
We're talking with Adam Crum, candidate for governor here on the Republican ticket. And we are up against the break here, so we're going to continue with him here in just a moment. We'll answer some questions in the chat room. And when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the permanent fund, the gas line, and the potential that we talked about here, just touched on a minute ago, for new revenues in the state. We'll continue the Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Dukes Show.
Okay, Adam Crum is our guest, and Adam, I know you can see the. Let me turn that up a little bit so you can see it's a little larger. Timer, this side. Timer in front of my head here. So when we get close to zero, there we got to wrap up whatever we're talking about. In the meanwhile, here, just FYI. All right. Well, let me go back to a couple questions in the chat room, since I thought there was a couple good ones in there. Ben Carpenter, former rep and host of Oversight Live, asks if Adam considers himself a limited government guy. If so, how do Alaskans limit a government growing at the size of the permanent fund itself?
I do. I am a limited government guy. There was things that occurred during COVID that Anchorage and Juneau did that people thought that we did at Health, because that the people get the government they elect, and we weren't going to come in as a state and overrule them, right? So I think that the permanent fund is an important issue, and it has allowed the people to pay attention over time to government, but we're starting to see these costs escalate because things cost more. And I agree that it's a pain in the butt to figure out what do we need, what is that actual deficit. Every even year, for whatever reason, right before an election, there's a global event that drives up the cost of this global commodity of oil that really just kind of lets them off the hook, that we can't have these honest conversations about where our revenue sits. And so it's hard to see where the actual deficit number is that we have to get to in order for a fiscal plan.
It's that's the problem here again, is that we want smaller, more limited government, but because we are taking our revenue in a form that no other state is taking it, essentially out of the market, out of investments, We have that. We've lacked that connectivity between the private and the public economy, and so the problem is that it's kind of growing unchecked because people aren't really paying attention to it because it's not affecting them directly.
Yeah, and it really is. And I have this conversation with Alaskans: in revenue, you collect the taxes of the state, and then you actually invest. And as revenue commissioner, you don't collect taxes from the people of Alaska, right? If it's the statewide property tax for oil and gas is only on oil and gas properties. If you do pay a property tax on your commercial properties, anything like that, that goes to commerce and it goes to the local municipality. But the state of Alaska, we don't have a statewide property income or sales tax. We're the only state without any of the three. And there is a disconnect of government. And so there's very few ways for people to actually pay attention.
Well, and that's the thing, even in states, because then I'll say something like that, and people say, well, look at California, they've got tax and they're not paying it. Well, they are paying attention. You're seeing the outflow. It's just sometimes people just don't pay attention. But I guarantee you, if all of a sudden they realize that they were going to see an increase in their taxes, because some new project has been put together or some new plan or program has been put together, they probably would start addressing that. Miguel asked the question, your position on the PFD and ranked choice voting. What you want to take that?
Yeah.
We got a minute and a half here.
Yeah. So the dividend is an important prospect to Alaska. My dad got hurt in the 80s, and we had to move everything from Homer, go to a 2-bedroom dry cabin in Anchor Point. Mid 80s, 87, 88, or late 80s, whatever you call that, was about like a $700 dividend. For a family of 7 at that point in time, that meant a lot. That added up. It is important to Alaskans. But right now, making sure that we get there, it's hard to find that much money in the earnings reserve over time to give that to Alaskans. And I want to make sure that we are finding a way to grow our way to economy. I'm personally tired of the political football that it has become. This chaos of not deciding the dividend and arguing about that takes up 90% of the legislature's attention, but it consolidated power into a select 3 or 4 in Juneau to where nothing happens until the last 2 weeks of session. And then those 3 or 4 people build the budget they want and then shove it down our throat. And right. I think we've got to solve that issue. As far as ranked choice voting, it's got to go. We absolutely got away from the one person, one vote. A system that you cannot actually hand count for results and it requires an algorithm. There's zero trust. There's no transparency in that. So yes, it is repeal on the I can't know the ballot measure, but yeah, yes to end the mess, whatever the phrasing is.
Yes on 2.
Is it 2?
Yeah, it's 2. Ballot measure 2. All right, which is ironic because ballot measure 2 gave us ranked choice voting. So it's 2 and 2. All right, we're going to continue. We're getting ready to get to it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing with Adam Crum, candidate for governor. And we actually got a little bit of a head start on my next topic, which was going to be the PFD, because somebody asked in the chat room Adam's thoughts on the PFD. But you just said something that caught my interest here. You said the PFD is important. Obviously, you have a personal story for your own family of why it's important. And I would agree with that. But then you said something interesting. You said we have to find a way to pay for it. My argument is this. The PFD is paid for. The PFD has always been paid for because it's based on a 5-year rolling average of the earnings, which are deposited into the earnings reserve. I mean, up until recently, and they transferred a bunch of money, there was $12 or $13 billion in the earnings reserve. So the PFD, this argument that somehow we got to find money to pay for the PFD, no, we've got the money. It's the one thing that is paid for already. Everything else has to depend on other forms of revenue. And so this idea that somehow we're trading one for the other to me has always been offensive because it is paid for. We're basically being taxed at this point, right, Adam? I mean, this is a stealth tax.
Fair enough. That you're correct in the way the formula is and the way the funds are deposited. And it is a stealth tax. But government does cost money. And I want to limit government as much as possible. But I also do want to make sure that we have the roads necessary in order to move our GDP. I took a drive up the Hall Road And it is just I still have a Class A CDL, and as a truck driver, it's offensive how terrible that road is. The capital projects we need in order to build that, to move that forward, because even with these, think about all the lease sales, we want a gas line. If we get more and more trucks on that road, it is just going to get worse and worse. And that is literally how we haul our GDP. We have to move those materials north so the resources can be sent south.
But that's a question. Isn't that a question of prioritization at this point? I mean, because that's what we always hear whenever we talk about a PFD. They're like, well, don't you like roads and troopers? Well, of course I like roads and troopers. Of course I like, airports and bridges and education. But isn't this a question? We're talking about $6 billion. You're telling me with $6 billion in spending, you couldn't find the money for the roads and the troopers? We've got capital expenses, but what about deferred maintenance? We build all these things. The state currently has a backlog of $10 billion in deferred maintenance. And what is that? That's prioritization. We spent money. We took money that should have been for maintaining the road or maintaining the school building. And instead of doing what we were supposed to do, which was upkeep those things, we decided to spend it on something else and deferred it. I mean, isn't this a prioritization problem?
It is a prioritization problem, and it started, not only did Walker cut the veto of the dividend, but he also then unilaterally, most people let him off the hook for this, he unilaterally did Medicaid expansion for the state of Alaska. That, and then when the legislature fought back under Pete Kelly as Senate president, the court said no, he could do that. And that expansion of Medicaid, that actually incentivized able-bodied adults to actually get on Medicaid and not necessarily work. And and that's a lot of time suck of resources that have moved through the door. And so, yes, there's things that we're paying for that I don't think we should be paying for at that level, that we definitely need to prioritize. There is the money there, but again, we have to look at how much are we willing to put forward as Alaskans? How much is our skin in the game? Because the dividend was set up as initially as a share of the resource profits. And I want to make sure that we are doing that in the appropriate way. But if we have to implement a broad-based tax, that turns into a redistribution of wealth. And that's a different philosophy.
Well, but that's not according to what ICER said at the beginning of this year. They analyzed all the different levers and mechanisms that they could use. And they said if there was a broad-based sales tax, because it would capture tourists and some other folks who are here living or working from out of state, living here that Alaskans would have almost 30% more money in their pocket if they had a full statutory dividend and a sales tax. They'd keep a portion of that because it would capture money from outside and other things. And so this idea that somehow we're not paying our fair share, it was supposed to be, according to Hammond's vision, a 50-50 split. Yep. Now we're at what, 80-20, 85-15? At 90-10, how much is enough, Adam? I mean, they're already taxing us. They just don't call it a tax. And that's what, $12,000 a year for every family of four in the state? That's a huge amount of tax.
It is a tax, and it's only going to get even worse to the cost of affordability. Because we've failed to prioritize these capital projects. The Port of Alaska, if you look at the PAMP surcharge, the Port of Alaska Modernization Project, even ADN even to this report that the surcharge that is used in order to pay for some of this project is actually going to cost a family of four in Alaska this year $1,500, and it's going to I think the price triples actually next year. And so I mean it is we're paying this money out of pocket, then the affordability or unaffordability, however you want to phrase it, right, it's going to keep going up and up. And so I mean, we have this ability, and I do think that we've kicked the can long enough on implementing what this is, and Alaskans have to be involved in this conversation and just real of what's going on. I like the idea also of as a revenue commissioner, we studied and looked at other states and about, what does a business-friendly tax environment look like? And honestly, what we found was a zero correlation between like a business tax setup and the business-friendly environment. Because like state of Texas has like the most business-unfriendly tax I could ever imagine in a franchise tax based on gross receipts. But yet people continue to flood there because as a government, what they do is they are incredibly transparent and predictable on permits. You guys, if you're pursuing a project, with 70% certainty whether or not this item is going to move forward. and these projects can change. The state of Utah taxes on everything: property tax, sales tax, income tax, but they redeploy that capital into infrastructure. And the roads are fantastic. They actually partner with private industry to do developments, and they build all of these tie-ins. And for like 15, 16 years in a row, you look on the Rich State Poor State Index, the business friendly, all this kind of stuff, the business scorecard, Utah's always number one because they dump money into their infrastructure. And it's how do we get to this balance? I do want to, instead of fighting over operating budget, I want to actually improve our capital budget because it has been peanuts over the last decade.
Well, and again, because in a lot of ways, I think that's intentional. This is why they let deferred maintenance slip, because they can use that money on other things until the infrastructure degrades to the point to where now we can do a new capital project, or we can get some federal match, or we can get some free money, and we can, that's part of the whole problem there. But let's go back to the PFD real quick here. We got about 4 minutes left in this segment. So I wave my magic wand. Adam Crum is emperor for the day. God emperor. You can decide. What would you do? How would you fix the PFD problem? How would Adam, in an ideal world, what would the PFD look like? Would it be a 50-50? Would it be constitutionally protected? Would it be a change? Would people be able to pencil whip it and sign off and say, I want to pay for government with it? What would be the answer for Adam Crum?
I think I'd like to get to where we have a 50-50. And then there's certainty. I am a fan, under Trustee Paper 10 of the Permanent Fund Board of Trustees, which actually called for the 2 accounts to 1 accounts, because right now of our roughly $90 billion fund, only $60 billion is actually constitutionally protected. If we were able to get the constitutional amendments to actually say, move from 2 accounts to 1 accounts, the legislature can only get up to a 5% draw or whatever, even pick a lower number and put the dividend in there. I think that's something that worth pursuing. I think I answered that. Sorry. The screen keeps moving.
No, that's fine. I have a problem with that because, again, the one thing that's in there is that constitutional protection. And if they set the 5% draw into that framework and we don't make 5%, well, we're eating back into the seed corn. And that's what the whole point of constitutionalizing and putting that protection on the corpus of the fund was to allow it not to be overdrawn, not to be eaten. And that's the problem. I know people say, well, if we combine them, we certainly wouldn't take more than, but you can't control it. If there is a drop in the stock market, if they are taking, a 5% draw could eat into that seed corn, and that would spell the doom. And that's a self-licking, that gets worse, right? That's a compounding issue at that point, and we don't need that.
It is true that could happen, but as of right now, the $30 billion in the earnings reserve outside of the corpus, the legislature could actually do a simple majority vote, 21-11, and actually and clear all of that out. That's all that would take. There is no 3/4 vote required on that. So that $30 billion is exposed right now.
Again, which leads me to the question of why aren't we paying a full PFD? If we had the money this year and we had a bonus and we transferred 1.6 billion from the earnings reserve into the corpus this year, that's why our budget went from 6 to 8 billion. Why aren't we finding the money to pay Alaskans a full PFD? That is their money by statute, by law. That is their money. This again comes back to we didn't want to because we want to spend the money on something else.
It came down to that, but while the dividend is important, I'd like to get to the level of certainty so Alaskans continue to pay attention. I don't think the dividend is the thing that actually bumps us in economic prosperity. I think that's where you can actually focus on making sure you do have stable funding on the key things that matter that keep our economy running. And it is a priority thing. We have this weird back and forth on the things that we dump money into versus these capital projects. Our deferred maintenance, as you said, is running up, and we want to make sure that we're going to build out these projects. But if our infrastructure fails along the way, these projects don't get done, and then Alaska's left holding the bag, and we're even worse shape.
Right. Which again goes back to the prioritization issue of what is truly important. You mentioned the Medicaid, Walker putting us on all the optional Medicaid programs. And of course, the One Big Beautiful Bill cut a lot of payments for that. And so we're going to be on the hook for some of that. Should the state of Alaska be exiting some of these optional Medicaid programs that we were put under Walker?
I think it needs to be evaluated. What I loved about Doge at the federal level was using these AI and these algorithms to actually dive into, but they didn't affect like the three things that affect the budget the most in Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. And one of the things that I'd like to do is actually create this Alaskan office. I'm calling it the Office of Results and Efficiency, or because we're going to dig for gold, and use to dive into these gains. Because when COVID hit, the federal, Congress actually made rules that you actually expanded eligibility for all these benefit programs, and you couldn't actually remove people from the rolls for a couple of years. And so it very much limited our ability to actually clean these things up. And all of these benefit programs, I think, have to be looked at in depth. And it's very difficult for staff internally to constantly do this. And so if you assign staff to that their job is to look at gain efficiencies and actually really limit this, man, we can actually really move the needle on the cost of government in Alaska if we can just stabilize, not even just cut. If you can keep Medicaid from growing at its current 4% a year, that is a massive gain to Alaska as well as the cost of healthcare in the state of Alaska.
Adam Crum is our guest. We are running out of time here. We got more coming up. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Don't forget, you can always join us on Facebook this morning if you'd like to be part of the conversation in the chat room. We'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with Adam Crum right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Adam Crum is our guest. We are here in the break asking questions. And I think Ben asks a valid question here. He says, I think it needs to be evaluated. You were talking about the Medicaid. You're the former health commissioner. You're the former commissioner of the Department of Health. What do you, how do you respond to that? Because I think that's a valid question.
That's what I just said. The Congress actually expanded under CRF and these other rules. They expanded eligibility for benefits programs and would not let us clear the rolls. So you couldn't even, when I was there, get a good snapshot of where the actual population is that you're there to serve because the services got expanded.
So your hands were tied is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
by the people that cut the checks.
So as governor, how would you fix that? If as commissioner your hands were tied, as governor, how would you fix that if the federal government's tying you up in dependency tape?
Well, they have, so those rules have since actually gone away, and that's where you actually implement this Office of Results and Efficiency to dive into and actually make sure that we are clear in the roles of fraud. Because Medicaid fraud, waste, and abuse, it varies on any of the numbers, but if you go to like the Paragon Health Institute, which is from Stand Together, they're saying it's 20-30%. And this is the stuff that we have got to do. It's so difficult in Alaska because the system is built up, and it's driven me nuts for the last decade. When you go to economic development forums and you say like, well, jobs are stagnant and GDP hasn't grown, but hey, one sector has been really healthy, and that's the healthcare. We've grown. Well, healthcare sector growing absent of GDP growth is a tax on all of us because that means it's more cost for the private sector. It means it's more cost of government. And that's where we have to actually put the full force of government time and attention into looking at what can we do to drive down healthcare costs in the state of Alaska. Look at the roles to make sure people that need the services are getting them, and the people that actually are able-bodied and don't actually get access to these glorious benefits.
Well, that's what they say. Right now, the last estimate was something like 272 or 275,000 Alaskans are on Medicaid. It's like almost almost between a third and a half of Alaskans are on the Medicaid program. No wonder it's running out of control. We have to find those cuts. When you were talking about Texas and some of the other states, Utah and Texas, Rob Myers asked the question, so places that make money off business make sure that businesses can grow? That's an interesting set of incentives. And that's part of what we have here. We have this complete and total disconnect in Alaska between the private economy and the state or the public economy, the government economy. And it seems like most of the legislators feel like the government economy is all that matters. As long as we're doing well, our employees are doing okay, our projects are growing, things are going like that. We don't give a crap what happens in the private economy because there is no connectivity like there is in every other state in the union. How do we fix that without creating some kind of taxable revenue loop where, as Rob just said, making money off business, make sure that the business can grow if you're making money off business.
You just said that. That was very well articulated. That is the inevitable goal that we have to get to in order to do this. I think you're talking about ICER when they went down to session, they called it the Alaska disconnect. That if the Silicon Valley wanted to bring 100,000 jobs to the state of Alaska and they drop them in Anchorage or throughout, it bankrupts the state because that's that many more kids with the BSA, that's that many more dividends, and there's no way to collect revenues off of that. And so we have to have this tied into that. We are actually, that there is this people paying attention. And so, yeah, I mean, we have to use that fiscal plan from that working group that as laid out to actually do these real steps to mature our economy. So we're not in this circle firing thing every 2 years, which is just, it's stunted us. We haven't been able to grow from this.
Right. Well, we haven't been able to grow from this for 40 years since we eliminated the income tax, where there's no connect. And that's, again, I thought that there was going to be a revolt when Bill Walker vetoed the PFD, but it was minor. The Senate didn't stand up for it. Bill Walker lost his job as governor, but nobody else really paid the piper on it. I thought for sure people would be incensed about it, but no, since they treated it as free money, it was no big deal. But you start digging into people's pocketbook every year, they're going to start paying attention, and you're going to have to care about what happens in the private economy.
Yeah. I mean, that is the private economy matters. And to me, it's more important to actually get more money in Alaska, not more money to the state of Alaska. You want to actually find ways to grow and create opportunity sets. And this is why, inevitably we're going to have to implement a fiscal plan. We have to actually build that. And it's difficult campaigning because you can have conversations with individuals on this, but talking to a mass group of people, it's a hard prospect because everyone's got their own opinions on this. If you're trying to get them to look at what can occur and use examples from other states of how we can break this cycle. And hey, do you want to stop talking about this now? And they say, oh yeah.
Well, that's because everybody's got their own special interests, and that's the thing. Everybody's going to have to feel the pain. That's the problem, is that everybody's going to have to feel the pain all at once. And that's why I think what the Fiscal Policy Working Group was really focusing on when they said it has to be a holistic approach. You can't do it piecemeal because that's what it'll happen. It would pull it apart a piece at a time. Here we go.
As Michael always says when he's tucking me into bed, no man's life, liberty, or property is safe while the legislature's in session. Oh, wait a minute. That was Mark Twain. Oh, well, still true, though. Michael Dukes, we only steal from the best.
It's true, no matter who says it. Especially in this state, your life, liberty, and property is definitely not safe at all. Adam Crum is our guest. We're down to one final segment here this morning, the fastest 2 hours in radio, about getting ready to wrap up here. But I want to talk with Adam. We've been talking about the PFD. There's some other big issues. Obviously, we know that the school funding issue is not going to go away. They got a big chunk of the BSA last year. They tried to get some more this year. We still don't know if the governor's going to they got a one-time fund this year. We still don't know if the governor's going to veto it or not. But we know that this is going to be an ongoing battle. The education industrial complex in this state is very strong. And so where does Adam Crum sit on educational funding? I mean, compared to where we are right now, we're spending $20,000 a student, $21,000 a student, something like that. We're one of the highest in the nation. We still are down 51 out of 53 on some of the metrics of reading and math and things like that. Where's the disconnect there, and what is the sweet spot? Do we continue to keep funding education or increasing it, or do we find policy changes in how we're doing things?
All right. So I'd love to have policy changes. What Dunleavy was putting forward for the charter bills, charter schools, school choice, things like that. We need to continue to do that. As I've gone around and talked to people, Alaskans are actually very tired of the BSA fight, meaning that when you ask them, like, how is the money spent in the BSA, we don't know, right? Because it passes down to the local level and school districts have control over it. And while they say, like, we want stability in education funding, they also want to make sure that it's going to their kids and it's actually training or teaching them and educating them in the things that are necessary. So what I like to do on that is go back to a combination of things. When Chenault was speaker, he did a great job of actually forcing the issue through that they would actually pass an education budget usually by the end of March. That gave some certainty to the school districts, and so they could plan out and turn in their stuff to the state, as opposed to waiting until June or July. So that actually helps. One of the things that I would like to do is to pull CTE, or career and technical education, out of the BSA using the Perkins match, create it as a separate line item. If it's a line item separate from the BSA, the state can actually demand KPIs or key performance indicators from school districts. Like, what are you guys actually doing to train kids in these things to attack these jobs of the future? How do we actually get it to where we don't have 25 to 30% of our workforce out of state in these highly lucrative jobs? That's one of those things that I want to lean into, because every community in the state's got a fab shop, a welding shop, a mechanic shop, and we can actually get these kids involved with high school credits, working at the local level with confidence and training. And they can also not only help that job out, but it pays more attention. There's these academy-based training programs across the state, like Kuselvac and Alaska Excel, and they've got examples of when they take kids from villages and they do this like 1 or 2 week academies multiple times throughout the year and expose kids to these training and teach them the soft skills. They've got school districts that went from 30% graduation rate to 75%. And so when you talk about education and doing it in an effective way, I want to lean into the CTE side to make sure that the kids have a way of focusing and paying attention, because that's the jobs that are open right now in the state of Alaska that are highly lucrative without going in debt.
So spending just increasing the budget, forever increasing the spend, the budget, things like that.
It's pulling that out and looking at this, because if you pull that out, you can actually then dictate, how do you partner? How is the school district actually going to look at this? And maybe it does require some stuff, but there's also, like, some of these programs, like Excel was 440 kids trained for $2.5 million. That's pretty dang good, like, return on investment. There are programs that work. We have policy changes that we could put in place that actually make sure we are training at an effective level. And you got to lean into it, like Mississippi. Mississippi went from the bottom and they worked their way up in a couple of years from just sheer force of will. And it wasn't dumping money into the system. It was forcing policy changes, best practices, and getting everybody on board that our job is to make sure our kids are set up for success.
As governor, but as governor, though, and this is what Dunleavy tried to do, and what some of the legislators tried to do this last year when they increased the BSA, is they try to force this policy discussion. And of course, the answer was, oh, we'll talk about that later. Just give us our money now. So how do you overcome that how do you overcome that in the legislature when all they want is more money and they don't want to talk about policy changes with you?
Honestly, we got to get back to where we have at least one of the bodies so you can negotiate. The fact that Prince of Wales Island by itself has 5 school districts is absurd, right? I mean, we've got 50 plus school districts across the state. They're not even consolidated into the same health plan, right? We could remove a huge burden from collective bargaining issues if we could actually get them to actually all join the same health plan for a risk pool.
Right, and that's been proposed and was supported by many, and yet at the end it did nothing. And that would have saved us. The estimates were $50 to $100 million a year just in healthcare costs,
and better service.
And better service. We got 53 districts. We could consolidate that down to. The state of Hawaii has got 1 district for all 8 islands. Why do we have? Why is this a problem where we've got 1 island that's got 5 districts on it? With whatever it is, 10,000 kids or something. It's a small number, and this is a huge problem. Go ahead.
I would just say this whole appeal, like, oh, we've always done this in Alaska and Alaska's too big. We have got to change how we're going about, because what we're doing right now is failing. We're failing kids. That the amount of money we spend, where it goes to. You can't keep teachers recruited, and it's driving. My mom's a retired educator. She was a 35-year teacher. And, she actually left when she retired. It was because she was done dealing with the system in the back and the forth, because at that time it was because they were moving a little too woke. And so she wanted to step away from that, because that was not what she was there, was to educate kids and help grow them.
Adam Crum is our guest. Adam, we're down to the last just under 3 minutes here. So I want to kind of give you the floor. Anything that we didn't hit on today that you want to hit on, any final thoughts, and then how do folks find out more about you? You've got an event coming up, so tell me where you're at, and I'll give you the floor for this final thought period here.
No, I appreciate that you actually create this. I mean, you've created a public square, right? People can actually come debate and have conversations. That's an important thing. And I think we've lost this ability to have civil discourse in our country and actually intellectually have these discussions to move forward. And not everybody has to be 100% aligned. You actually have to make sure you're pulling the same direction towards the same goal, which is, are you serving Alaskans, right? How are we doing that? And we're all going to have different mentalities because we're all in different stages of life, right? I've got 2 little kids, which is why I want to make sure there's an Alaska that they actually can thrive in going into the future, that we can make sure that Alaska has keeping our youth, they're attracting them, that we have the jobs here and we're building the infrastructure that make families want to stay. My website's adamcrum.com. It's the easiest one. I was just down in Homer, then Soldotna. This week, I'm going to be doing a road show, working my way up to Fairbanks. So stopping along the way in Trapper Creek and Healy and then Nenana. I've got a big event up there. Ralph Seekins is my campaign co-chair up in Fairbanks. So big event at his house, and then a bunch of truckers events over the weekend. So it'll be kind of moving around all over the place. We're trying to have these real conversations with Alaskans that want to make sure that how are we protecting like what we have in the state, this quality of life, to make sure that we are building it ahead, and that Alaska is a place that people want to stay and thrive. We have this chance and this opportunity here to either move left and stay and manage decline, or we can move right and we can go build something. And that's what I want to fight for. I want to make sure that we're doing this conversation you talked about with the legislature. We have to have a governor that is the de facto head of the party, who actually is actively campaigning and fundraising and doing it in select seats. If there's 2 or 3 seats that we have an opportunity to steal back the House this year, if we focus our time and effort into that and we don't actually waste time in other areas. So we can actually move this ahead. We can actually get Alaska to make sure that we are stepping forward into being this place in the future of opportunity, because as the world changes, Alaska is going to get more and more important. As Billy Mitchell said in 1935 to Congress, in my opinion, in the future, whoever holds Alaska holds the world. And that is what we've got here. We have this opportunity set to be the critical mineral supply chain for the United States, to be the energy provider for our Asian allies, and to grow our state into the future.
Adam Crum, thank you so much for coming on board. We appreciate it. We appreciate you being part of it today. We got more coming up tomorrow, folks. Thanks for coming in and joining us. We will see you then. Be kind, love one another, live well. All right, Adam, I give you 1 second final bite. This is what we do at the end of the show with just you, me, and 60 of our closest friends on the internet. We'll chat. Anything else? Anything I didn't hit on that you wanted me to hit on, or that you wish I'd touched base on?
I would say I want to make sure that Alaska, that we break through with energy. that is our key. That this transmission line through rate reduction bonds, opening up Terra Energy, AI data centers give us the economic base to actually make sure power projects work. And so by putting it on the North Slope helps. If for some reason we can't actually get this gas line through because of obstructionists, let's build power plants and ship the power down south into the grid with HVDC lines. We can energize our grid and get our energy going. And Iceland is the prime example. It's a rock in the North Atlantic. They've got such cheap energy because they built out their hydro over time. They import bauxite to smelt it into aluminum.
Right. And the long wire DC distribution plan has been around for 40 years. And I mean, if we can't get gas, I guess that's the next choice. Plug it into the grid somewhere else. But this has been an interesting conversation. I am a little concerned about where we go with the PFD and look at it and the taxation, because again, without some kind of connectivity, without some kind of visible skin in the game, we've got skin in the game right now. Again, they're taking $10,000 a year from a family of 4 already and spending it, but without a visible skin in the game, I just don't see and especially since the legislature doesn't seem to care what goes on in the private economy. That to me is the biggest problem. If they cared about what happened to the private economy, this gas line deal would have been done already.
It would have. And Alaska's really turned into the land of the nonprofits. Whether that's from internal money or external money, it's absurd. Even in the Mat-Su, where I live now, it is just an absurd amount of nonprofits that exist here. We don't have enough producers here, and folks are completely disconnected from that.
Something like 5,000 NGO and nonprofits in the state, all of them with their hand out, all of them receiving money. It's an industry. It really is literally an industry now, and we're receiving it and we're spending money on it, which is just crazy. All right, Adam. Well, thank you so much for coming on board. Appreciate you being part of it today, and we look forward to talking to you again here before the primary.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on board. All right, folks, that does it for me. I am done for today. Again, I'm not satisfied with some of the answers there. I knew I wouldn't be, but interesting connections there. So we'll see what this looks like here in the near future. All right, my friends. Well, that does it. We are out of time. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind. Love one another. Live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
A radio network. An empire upon an empire. I make no promises. You on the march. With one purpose only. To point out and make public the dishonesty. Now in complete control of the government of this state. There is only one man who can rid the politics of this state of the evil domination.